So we thought we'd have a bit of a chat about regulation and the state of play in the tier 1 markets, and we've seen some trends amongst our clients and friends in the industry. So maybe let's start with the UK. What are we seeing most commonly happen in the UK market?
Yeah, so I think the UK has been on one large journey. So if we look at when it first started back in 2014, licensing coming in, new regulator around an established territory, and I think you've seen a journey that the regulator has taken, and it's sort of come to a point where we are now in 2021, where every single year it's evolved. They've gone deeper. They've taken it sort of beyond. It started off with anti-money laundering. We saw several companies being fined for serious AML failings, and then understanding the root causes of those problems. The root causes from there were actually what was creating these, and majority of these cases were customers that had fundamental sort of gambling problems, and these were then resulting in them overspending and not being able to afford, and wanting to gamble, and then trying to find monies to fulfill their desires, and subsequently committing offences in order to place a bet on various sites and operators. So we saw a shift from a regulation perspective from there to then look further up sort of the funnel, and the whole piece around responsible gambling and now safer gambling as it's sort of become, because the understanding and the knowledge of the industry, and obviously from the regulator side, has developed, the more that they've looked into it. So we saw elements around the marketing side as well, and how marketing could become more responsible, in the sense of not appealing to children. The shift sort of within there to understand that actually, the way in which even video games were designed as well, that this was creating an education in younger people, particularly where you sort of understand that they may not have the full sort of life experiences of an adult, or understand the value of money, these sorts of things, or the responsibility that sort of comes in with taking out a loan or a credit card. So you started seeing the regulation sort of shifting in order to put more consumer protectionism mechanisms in place. So this was, say the advertising, the blocking of credit cards, customer interactions, and looking at the customers from a behavioural aspect, and not just a gameplay perspective. So what times they would log in and play, or if their bet sizes.
Looking at those patterns, isn't it?
Exactly. So this is it's sort of as it sort of developed and more knowledge and information has become available, and sort of understanding and where this is sort of it's sort of taken us to. It's also been a very similar sort of path, but on a longer standing sort of timeline with the financial services industry, and you can sort of trace that arc with gambling and how that has sort of happened, but in the shortest period of time. And they've come to essentially that key $1 million question, if you like, and that is affordability, because that is where it all starts. What can you afford to do? You can afford to place a bet. You can afford to spend that amount of money. You are not then going to be overstretching yourself and ending up in a position where you are stealing funds or committing a crime in order then to place bets, and that puts more onus on the operators in the relationship there. And I think that's sort of where we've now got to in 2021. Obviously still pending from the outcome of the recent sort of consultation, and I think then going on sort of beyond that, and how this will then transpire sort of going forwards, is that you'll be looking at things like affordability, and then you have the impending Gambling Review Act, which I think is long overdue from that perspective. The act was in 2005. We're now in 2021. There's been significant changes. I mean, I remember in 2005, like Skype, I think, was just coming out there, like trying to have a voice call which kept dropping, and like you was rating it 1 star because there wasn't any sort of connectivity to now to the fact that it's all sort of video, and even the way in which the games have progressed. From when I first started working in the industry in 2008, it was very two-dimensional. The cards are on the tables now. There's graphics, the interactions.
Technology so advanced.
Yeah, mobile.
And I think the challenge for operators has changed significantly, hasn't it? Because when we think back to 2014 and even before that, the marketplace certainly wasn't as competitive. I think the UK GC was in a very different place when you consider, the state of play of the regulations. So you had a lot of operators looking to license when the whitelist was abolished, for example. There was a lot of M&A activity in the market, and I think so the focus has really had to shift from an operator perspective, and they've had to have a real education. It's such an onerous marketplace now, it's hugely competitive, and I think there's a real lack of skills as well, compliance skills to support those operators. So it's an interesting challenge, and I think the challenge continues to just evolve.
Yeah, and I think that is the key part there, because if you look at the industry and you're saying about the lack of skills, right? And from my experience of having worked on the operator side and what I sort of saw in day-to-day challenges there is, and the likes of a lot of people, even for myself, it was learning as you went along with your career, because the new regulation was brought in, what this meant, whether you got this right, you got this wrong, how you sort of understood this. And it also meant that there's people that were new joining the industry. As businesses have grown, as demand for more staff has increased, you then have your ever increasing compliance obligations. You're constantly having to educate, learn, train and develop your staff through the tougher requirements of compliance from when they first started off in 2014 to where they are now. How the LCCP has developed in that time frame, where it's bringing in the credit card blocks, the affiliate side of things, the way that they've expanded out on the complaints, the CMA reviews that they sort of carried out, and what this meant has resulted in a lot more work being put on operators, and within that, compliance officers, also heads of compliance, are having to spend a lot more time focusing on training and on developing their staff to make sure that they are there and able to take decisions and find sort of solutions which don't necessarily jeopardise or bring into question their actions on their licence.
Yeah, and as we know, most of these operators are multi-jurisdictional. So not only do they have to adhere to the UK, which I think is considered to be the benchmark, but also you've just come out of Gibraltar, so Gibraltar and Malta likewise are really interesting places, and I think they in themselves have seen some real change recently, haven't they? Yeah,
so I think Gib and Malta, the two offshore, if you like, jurisdictions for companies to be able to hold their
outwards facing licenses.
Exactly, they're global sort of licenses, where it doesn't necessarily contravene local licensing sort of jurisdiction. And I think Malta in particular has had quite a steep learning curve over the last few years, and I think it's, if you look at the activity that's emanated from the fines from the Gambling Commission, the majority of them have been centred around operators in Malta. And I think that is partly due to I think the experience of the industry over there. There are a larger proportion, and it was tied into as well the money value valuation, and what we saw was the initial sort of response where there were deficiencies identified, and I think recent news has sort of confirmed that Malta has improved significantly its framework, and in my time I think sort of working over there, saw that in my interactions with the MGA and the FIEU, how serious they were in ensuring that the right levels, especially from an AML perspective.
Those controls were there.
Exactly, so your controls, your policies, your business risk assessments. So all of the things that you would see on a UK sort of licensed operator, are the requirements over there, but the way perhaps they were being implemented or carried out, highlighted to a fundamental sort of lack of understanding from individuals in those positions. And when it comes down to the understanding part, I mean, come back to it time and time again, that's down to knowledge, and knowledge is ultimately gained through training. I think that's sort of where I think the regulation is ever evolving. It creates a much more larger pressure on organisations to ensure that their training models or their training approaches are fit for purpose.
Absolutely. And we're sat in the Isle of Man today, so we can't forget about the Isle of Man. But I think it's a jurisdiction that's so well known for being stable, consistent. Obviously, in other offshore jurisdictions, those who are outwards facing licences, if you like. You've not been here very long. What's your take on the regulation here?
So I think looking at the difference, I've worked across multiple jurisdictions. So when I look at the Isle of Man, and if I try and compare it in terms of the outward facing, so I say Isle of Man, Gibraltar, Malta. Isle of Man for me is up there as one of not I think being like biased in a way because I'm based here or anything like that. I feel that it is genuinely pragmatic in terms of the approach from the AML. The tone from the regulator is that they want the operators to be sensible in their approach. They want them to have the right controls, the right framework, the right policy things in place. They don't want to over-regulate, but at the same time, they don't want any Mickey Mouse club sort of joining to damage its sort of reputation.
Absolutely, and I think its reputation for its player protection mechanisms is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So, as far as that badge of credibility from an Isle of Man crest point of view is concerned, I think it's a really prestigious license to have.
No, definitely a license. I think sort of up there, and I think it's it too has gone through its money value evaluation, and I think it was only a couple of days ago or yesterday, I think in the news, Moneyval have actually taken Isle of Man off its reporting list. Yeah. So they're quite happy with the framework. But in terms of that, I think it just shows, the progress of the island, and in terms of, the fact that it can provide that sort of home, that commercial sort of pragmatism, but in the same vein, those player protections, to ensure that its operators are reputable in holding their businesses there.
God.